Hello and welcome to our first lesson of this B9 topic. I want to start this lesson with a question. I want you to have a think about it on the board. There is a young lady who's either listening to music or is asleep because she has a hat on her head, and there is a question saying, do you ever completely rest? I'd like you to pause the video now and have a think about that question. Do you ever completely rest? Press play again when you're ready to go over the answer. So, many processes have to happen in your body to keep you alive. Respiration is one of those such reactions. It provides energy in order for all these reactions to take place. So even when you're asleep, if you're lying still, if you're doing absolutely nothing, your cells are carrying out respiration, therefore you do not ever completely rest. So today's title is Cells at Work. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to state that all cells respire. You should be able to explain the process of respiration and how it releases energy. And you should be able to evaluate why respiration is an exothermic reaction. So we can start by saying a pretty obvious one. Well, maybe, maybe not. But cells need energy to survive. Okay, so cells need energy to survive. There's lots of things that cells use energy for. So we can say cells use energy for ... And we can say that they drive chemical reactions. So to carry out chemical reactions, we can say that they're needed to build or break down molecules. For those of you that are interested, anabolic steroids build muscle, so they build things up. If something is catabolic, it breaks it down. So they need energy for anabolic and catabolic reactions that build or break down molecules. They're needed for movement. So energy is needed for movement, by which we mean to contract muscles. They're needed for cell division, so mitosis and meiosis. So we can put in brackets here, mitosis and meiosis. Okay. They're needed to maintain what's known as homeostasis. So to maintain homeostasis. And we will be doing a topic on homeostasis in year 11, but for now you can just know that homeostasis is to maintain constant internal conditions. Internal conditions. We've got they're needed for active transport. Active transport, something that we covered when we looked at moving substances. And they're also needed to transmit nerve pulses. So to transmit nerve pulses, something else that we need to look at. And we're going to look at those at the start of year 11. So cells need energy to survive, and they use energy to carry out chemical reactions, to build or break down molecules, for movement, to contract muscles. If you're a plant, it wouldn't necessarily be contraction in muscles, but they do need energy for movement. Cell division, mitosis and meiosis, the maintenance of homeostasis to maintain constant internal bodily conditions. I know we haven't covered this yet, but what we mean by internal body conditions are things like temperature, things like pH, water levels. We're going to look at that next year. Okay. They're needed for active transport, and they're needed to transmit nerve impulses. Okay. Now, in order to get energy, cells have to carry out a process known as respiration. Respiration. Okay. Now, respiration is the release of energy from glucose. Okay. So it's the release of energy from glucose. Okay. So when cells carry out respiration, they release energy from glucose. Do not put that they make energy. Respiration does not make energy, abides by the laws of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created, it cannot be destroyed. So I'm going to put here, because everybody does it every year, in capitals, if I can spell, releases energy. Exclamation point. Not makes it. So if you look at a mark scheme, it will always say do not accept makes energy. It releases energy. Okay? Now, because it releases energy, respiration is an exothermic reaction. So we can add underneath here by saying that respiration releases energy, so is exothermic. Okay? Now, over the coming lessons, we're going to be looking at different types of respiration. There are two main types. So we can say two types of respiration. Two types of respiration. Dot dot. Aerobic and anaerobic. Today we're going to be looking at aerobic respiration. Okay? So cells need energy to survive. Cells use energy to carry out chemical reactions, to build or break down molecules, so they do anabolic or catabolic reactions. For movement, such as contracting muscles, for cell division, mitosis and meiosis, to maintain homeostasis, which is to keep a constant internal condition, such as temperature, pH, water, active transport, to transmit nerve impulses. They get energy through a process known as respiration. Respiration is the release of energy from glucose. It releases energy, does not make it. Energy cannot be made, it is only moved from one energy store to another. In this case, it would be moved from a store of chemical energy into a store of movement energy and some heat, okay, which we'll talk about in a moment. Respiration releases energy, so it's exothermic, and there's two types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic. So as always, we will refresh our screen and we will start with another keyword. We'll start with the term aerobic. That's the worst A in history. Aerobic respiration. Okay. Now the word aerobic means with oxygen. Okay. So the word aerobic means with oxygen. So aerobic respiration is the release of energy from glucose with use of oxygen. So the release of energy from glucose with use of oxygen. Okay. Now, this takes place in almost all organisms. Almost all organisms carry out aerobic respiration. Okay. So we can put underneath here, carried out by animals, plants, and microorganisms. Okay. The good news is that the word equation for respiration, for aerobic respiration, is the reverse of photosynthesis. So we can put the word equation for aerobic respiration dot dot. We've got glucose. So let me just get some different colours. We will use this one. So we've got glucose being added to oxygen, because aerobic respiration is the release of energy from glucose with use of oxygen. So we've got glucose plus oxygen. These are our reactants. When we add glucose to oxygen, we make the products, which are the reactants in photosynthesis. In this case would be carbon dioxide plus water. Okay. Now these are our products. Okay. So this shows how energy is released from glucose and oxygen. We get glucose being oxidized, we're adding oxygen to glucose to make carbon dioxide plus water, and we can also add on here in brackets plus energy. Now you can't put that as one of your products because it's not a substance, you can't physically hold it. Okay? If we were to put this as a symbol equation, we would need glucose, which is C6H12O6, being added to oxygen, which is O2, carbon dioxide would be CO2, water would be H2O, and then to balance this equation, we would need to put a 6 in front of the oxygen, a 6 in front of the carbon dioxide, and a 6 in front of the water. That is now balanced. Okay? Now, the energy that is released from this, some of the energy is useful, as you've done in physics, you've done about useful and waste energy. But a lot of the energy released is released as heat. So we can say that some energy released from aerobic respiration is useful, comma, but most is released as waste heat energy. Now, we have to use the word waste heat energy because technically that's what it is. However, some organisms have learnt to use this waste heat energy. Okay? Now, mammals and birds are two types of organism that need to keep warm so that the enzymes inside of their body work properly. So this is a picture from off the lesson the lesson slides. Penguins huddle together and other birds huddle together to gather the heat from each other. So all of these organisms are carrying out respiration, they live in a cold environment and they huddle to exchange heat from the amount of respiration each organism is doing. So we can say that penguins huddle to share the heat they produce. The other example that I've got that's on the PowerPoint, however I'm not really going to write about this one, I'm just going to add it in, is that insects have muscles in their back that require them, I'm not sure why it's done that, I'm not even sure how to get out of it. Insects, hang on, let me see if I can, oh no, I don't know what's happened. Can we zoom out? If not, I'll just have to carry on, I do apologise. We'll just have to carry on. So insects have these muscles on their back that carry out respiration very quickly so that they can fly. The muscles on their back have to have lots of mitochondria in order for this to take place. So one final thing that we do need to write down before I finish the lesson, it'll only be a very short one, don't worry, and we're going to put it in red because we haven't mentioned it, is that respiration takes place in the mitochondria of cells. And that concludes today's lesson. By now you should be able to state that all cells respire, you should be able to tell me the process of respiration and how it releases energy, and you should be able to tell me why it is exothermic. Should you have any questions about today's lesson, please comment below in Google Classrooms or send me an email directly and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Until the next lesson, take care.